Let's call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission for Lathrup Village for July 21st, not the 17th, as is on the proposed agenda.
Oh, biscuit, sorry.
And we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gotta get my flag background up.
Thank you, Scott.
That was cool, Scott. Love it.
I know my duties.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you could do the roll call.
Roll call. Chair Piotrowski,
Here.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Present.
Secretary Thompson, Board Member Fobbs.
Here.
He's here. You're here.
Here.
Thank you.
Of course.
Board Member Julieza,
Here.
Board Member Cantor,
Here.
and Board Member Stansberry.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the first item on our agenda this evening, and that's the approval of the agenda. We got word, or at least I did. I don't know if the rest of the commission had or not.
I know, just you.
That the site plan review, GMC management, has pulled out their submittal and wants to address that next month. So we know of that change. And the plan is to continue on with the agenda as it's written otherwise, unless there are any other new items that have popped up. So if everyone's had a chance to review that and there are no other comments other than the date correction, we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda, removing the site plan review items off the agenda and correcting the date.
Second.
Those in favor?
No, got to take a person by person vote.
Yep. Roll
Roll
call.
call. Roll call. Board Member Fobbs,
Aye.
Board Member Hammond,
Yes.
Board Member Julieza,
Aye.
Board Member Cantor,
Yes.
Board Member Piotrowski,
Yes.
Board Member Stansberry,
Yes.
and motion carried. Unless the Board Member Thompson join us? No.
So I have an email from her. She's trying to join, but she's having a hard time signing in.
Okay.
Hey, Susie, I see an orange bar at the top of my screen that says practice mode only. Attendees cannot join until you broadcast. Do you see that?
I also see that, and I have never seen that before.
I haven't either.
Curious, I don't have it on my screen.
Yeah, it's on mine.
So I don't know what that means.
Should we broadcast?
I tried clicking broadcast and it
All right, I'm
doesn't.
going to click it. Oh, it says the webinar is now broadcasting to all attendees.
Hey, there you go.
I think all that, but there was nobody there anyway in the attendees box.
There is now one person in the attendees box, and it's
Oh
Anna.
wait, there's one person now. Let's allow her.
Unmute. Oh wait.
If you can promote her.
panelist.
Promote her to,
just-
yeah, maybe
sorry,
she
I
opened
did.
it from the general panelists
Yeah.
or general audience.
Okay.
It's here now.
Hi, Anna.
Yay! It worked. Anna's here. Sorry.
We're almost
Okay.
done, Anna.
All right.
Sounds like meeting.
Okay, we are moving on to item 4 on the agenda, which is approval of the meeting minutes for the regular meeting of June 16th, 2020. Everyone has had a chance to review the meeting minutes. We'll entertain any comments or corrections at this time. Otherwise, we'll entertain motions to approve the minutes as written.
Look good to me, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Those in favor?
Roll call. Board Member Hammond,
Yes.
Board Member Huliza,
Aye.
Board Member Cantor,
Yes.
Board Member Piotrowski,
Aye.
Board Member Stansberry,
Aye.
Board Member Thompson,
Yes.
and Board Member Fobbs.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. We've already, I think, determined that there were no one in the audience this evening, so we can skip over the public comment session. Go on to old business and tabled items, comprehensive plan update, the recreation plan. So way down.
All right. So we have included in your packet today the recreation plan for that's up for public review right now. So that's a requirement of the DNR, is that the recreation plan has a 30-day review period before City Council will hold the public hearing, which they will do on August 17th. Is that right, Susie?
That's
So
correct.
we included it as an FYI, open to comments and or questions. Generally, it follows the DNR guidelines for recreation plans. One of the things that I think is helpful to note, I had it open, the map on page 20 is, I think, kind of a nice one in that it shows the coverage for parks in the city. And we are using the standards that are provided, general standards that address mini parks, which is about a 5-minute walk, a neighborhood park, which is about a 10-minute walk, schools, which we'd consider about the same, and then community parks, which would be covering a larger area and serving a larger population. That would be about a 20-minute walk radius, about a mile. And if you look at those, even the facilities that aren't in the city is pretty well covered with recreational opportunities, which leads nicely into, if we look at the goals on page 22, the first goal, taking care of the existing parks and recreational facilities. This is consistent with the plan that we helped the city prepare 5 years ago, really to not expand the parks in the city, but to really focus on the maintenance of the parks and other facilities that you already have. And then look at, as goal 2, some of the new recreational facilities, but also looking at programming as well. And then looking at working with the city of Southfield on multi-use paths that would connect everything together to really promote the connectivity for the proximity of the facilities that we showed on the map on page 20. And then on page 25, you'll see the list of the park improvements. These were assembled by the Recreation Committee and the Recreation Coordinator, Chris Clough, and included here. And that is essentially it. When we go, next time when we go to work on the capital improvement plan, which will be next fall and not at the beginning of 2021. But before that, we will want to take a look at these and make sure that that our capital improvement plan is accounting for these items that are in the recreation plan, and that we're properly planning for the financing and providing the resources needed to implement these items. So that's it generally. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
So the only note that I took on this, it looks great, by the way. It's clearly a lot of work and effort and thought went into this. And I like the fact that there are measurements associated with so many parts of it. The memorial trees, I think it's a really important part of the park and the city's history, and it's great. But I don't like the idea of replacing all 20 trees when not all of them need replacing. So I guess my only comment is to consider to have the Parks and Rec Department consider potentially replacing just the trees that really require replacement and trying to maintain the existing trees that are in good shape.
Maybe there's a way to, and I don't know, maybe maybe Chris has already done that, to take a look at their condition. Maybe have an arborist take a look at that. And maybe it's a matter of putting in a phased program that you don't have to do them all at once if they don't all need to be replaced. But, this year we're going to do 4, and next year we're going to do 4 more, and the next year we're going to do 4 more, and that it's more of a phased and evolving and ongoing maintenance plan.
Yeah, hopefully the trees can be maintained healthy, then you don't need to replace them, right? But maybe you have a lower cost budget item to just maintain the existing trees. I know some of them got diseased and had to be cut down, and that was great because they were a problem and an eyesore, and now they have empty spots and those need to be dealt with. But then some of the trees are in good shape, so
good.
Well, and I know they talked about it at the Recreation Advisory Committee last week on the 14th. And it sounded like, at least from what I was hearing, it sounded like most of those memorial trees were diseased, which is why they had to take them down. And I actually sent Chris some of the upcoming tree planting grants that he will be able, that we can work on to help replace those at a more affordable way for the city, and make sure that we're replacing our canopy. So
sure. Makes sense.
stay tuned.
Okay. If that is the case, that all of the trees are diseased, then it's a different story.
Yeah, I mean, that's just from what I recall. I'm looking at my notes. I don't see anything specific about it, but that's what I remember hearing. So
yeah, I don't necessarily expect anybody on this call to be able to do anything about it. It's just feedback that I have, because the rest of it looked fantastic to me.
I made a note about it. Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is Char. I don't know whose mic is on, but there's background sound there. I don't know who's that.
Is it me?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, it's probably the.
Yeah, it went away when you muted yourself, Joe.
Okay, well,
Oh, okay.
then you all have a good evening. I'll just sit here and listen. I'll type my comments. I'm so sorry. I was telling a couple of you when I first joined in, I went to the office for the first time today and I dropped my headset out of my bag on my way out the door.
Oh, no.
So I've got to use
Oh,
this
no.
one, and I know it's not good and I have some noise here, so I apologize. I will mute myself and just listen for now.
Now it's gone. I noted the fiscal year funding took a 21% hit.
What are you looking at, Chara? Which page?
The budget.
5, page 5.
I believe that Chris was asked to reduce that this year in particular.
Oh,
I assume that's attributable to just belt tightening and not a any other reason. I don't know if the parks have. I would assume that they've received some less use through this COVID situation, but
Yeah, it's more a little bit of a combination of both, but it's more just a belt tightening. I mean, we had to dip into the general fund by $500,000 this year when our fiscal year budget ends on what's today? It ends on the June 30th. Is that right? Yeah, June 30th. And then our upcoming fiscal year budget 2021 is projected to be $300,000 out of the general fund to balance, and that doesn't account for. Let me rephrase that. That's assuming that we get the same level of revenue sharing from the state and, you know, Act 51 monies from the state. And the reality of it is we're probably not going to get the same amount. So we're going to have to go into the general fund even further. So everywhere across the board, we were looking to tighten wherever we could.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest piece of the reduction looks like the contracted programming line item, which kind of makes sense because we know some of the events are being shifted to either non-existent or, you know, more virtual or smaller groups. And so there's less funding required to execute those things.
Yeah.
It is nice to see, though, that there are specific line items with budget assignments for youth programs and adult programs and senior programs, and, you know, specific funds allocated for each one of those targeted things. So that's great.
Is it safe to say that some of the money that was budgeted for this year has not been spent because of the cancellations? And
I think so. But you know, but
Or
the thing,
rather
the problem
been-
is you also have a huge reduction in revenue on the other side.
right.
So
Yeah.
you know,
Became
it's,
unfunded, and therefore it's, yeah, it's not quote a savings, it's a
Yeah, renting the community room was a pretty good source of revenue for the city, and that's
yeah.
dried up.
Yeah, I think don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere between, we lost so far about $20,000 to $30,000 in room rental.
Wow.
One of the things that struck me just in going through the report was the comprehensiveness of it, and it just kind of struck me as I don't know. I guess it struck me as impressive considering the size of our community. But I think that in part is because it addresses the reach of parks above and beyond, and locations outside the city as well that residents have access to. And I've spoken to people, not necessarily residents in the past, but people who are new to the metro area, and they've been very impressed with the park systems and the availability of those amenities to people. So.
Right. I think as some communities have done park plans in the past, they've looked at the charts, for example, the one on page 16 that shows the National Recreation and Parks Association agency review, and they look at those benchmarks, or they look at the benchmarks on the next page from the DNR, and they look at the acres per population. It's not, I don't think it's up to each community to provide all of that necessarily. And if we can provide some of that collectively within a walkable range for the residents, I think that's equally as important. And so thinking about it, like you said, more comprehensively, and thinking about our complete streets plan and our shared use pathways, and making sure that we have those connections is just as important as providing all of those things ourselves. And I don't think that's something that most communities are able to do right now. I think there's a recognition that we really need to provide some of this collectively, and how can we provide some amenities at a really local level, like that mini park level, or using school facilities to be able to do that. It's not up to a community to fund all of that on its own. We need to develop those partnerships and maintain them and nurture them and share in those costs. Because at the end of the day, it's important not only for our health and wellness physically, but also really important for the social interactions that we're able to have. And so it's a community health issue beyond just physical improvements, but mental and social as well.
Hey, if does anyone have any additional comments regarding the plan at this point? Or I should say if not, we can move on to the next item on our agenda, which is other matters for discussion. If there's anything on the minds of commissioners, now would be the time to raise it, ask questions. None?
I just have one question, and Susie, maybe you know the answer to this. You know, I looked over obviously the site plan reviews. So everything they're doing, with the exception of parking lot and landscaping, is pretty much interior. Not doing any. They have no plans to do any type of facade improvements or anything like that.
That is correct. And that's and they have building inspections with all the trades, including the fire marshal, scheduled for both this Friday and next Friday. So those were originally supposed to happen in the middle of March, and then they were intending to come before you all in, I think we said April or May. Obviously that got thrown out the window with the pandemic. So it's taken us a bit longer to get those rescheduled. The inspectors are generally pretty backed up with all the other inspections they need to do. So that's where the bulk of their improvements need to be made.
So did these come about through the property owner's own volition, or was this something that was in part driven by the city trying to update records, or
the
just
inspections
curious?
and the site plan review process, you mean?
For these properties particular, is it like a proactive owner addressing issues that they need to address in renovating their facilities? Is this something you're at liberty to say?
Not entirely. I mean, before the previous property owner had sold these properties, he had been told that he was going to need to go through the site plan review process because I mean, as you all know, I'm sure you've seen, parking has been a challenge there and has been a real pain for the residents and the tenants there for a lot longer than I've even been working for the city. So that was an issue we were trying to move through with Jet and make sure that we had that the buildings were safe and that we were, getting to a point where we could address those parking issues through the site plan review process. And then he sold those businesses, and so this is a continuation of that. Did I get that all right, Scott?
Sounds pretty good. And no acronyms.
I thought so too.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Thank you. Curtsy over here. So
one of the things that if you had a chance to read the review letters, you would note that we called out in each of them is that the buildings were likely, we don't have the original site plans on file, but they were likely developed as office buildings. And then clearly over time, there's been a transition to more personal service and some retail, and it's changing up the demand for parking. And so we're trying to address that. So the current property owner, we met with them back in February and we talked through all of this. And so nothing really should have been a surprise that was included in the letter. The one thing that we noted that was kind of late in the game were the dumpsters. As we went out and did our little site inspection, last week, looking at, gee, they don't show up on the site plans, but yet here they are. And not only that, but they're really not in great condition and there was trash everywhere. So really feeling like that was important to call out. Not that there was trash everywhere, but that they were there and they were not included on the site plan. Buildings that are existing, sites that are existing when there's not a material change to the exterior site improvements, we just try to bring them as close into compliance as possible and address issues that are significant. And I think parking and the dumpsters are probably the two that we felt were the most important. And
Yeah.
so I think they'll go back and try to rework that. And they knew that that was an issue. They knew that a lot of their parking that they were counting on is in the right of way, and that they were going to have to try to reconcile that in some way, whether through variance or through parking off site or some other kind of reallocation of tenants into those spaces. So hopefully they'll be able to do that over the next couple of weeks.
And I noticed that, well, I think it was all the properties, or at least 2 out of the 3 had, and I say it in that fashion because you go through one and it's like, I'm starting over again. They're very consistent or very similar to each other in terms of the issues that they're facing. And the residential property that is like a half lot or a portion of a lot adjacent to them, and having to put the separation wall between the business properties or the CV properties versus the residential, which just had me thinking about, if they own those properties and the wall has to go where the wall needs to go, then their neighbor benefits from having the additional property next to them that's not theirs, but the wall is not, unless there's some future plan for them to look at trying to change the zoning on those lots, in terms of maybe using that to address their parking needs or whatever. But I didn't go so far as to recollect where our status would be on something like that. So.
And that was one of the things that we thought was worth bringing up as well. So you'll remember, those of you who've been on the commission for a while, that we had talked about, probably most recently, maybe a year ago, although maybe we talked about it sooner, because we did end up putting it on the agenda or on the virtual open house for the master plan, that idea of the special land use for the parking in that R1 district right adjacent to that. These could be candidates for that. That would really address some of the parking issues. Because I think that generally speaking, we don't want to get rid of those businesses. That's not the point of the review letter, to say, you know, you've got a parking problem, you need to clear out your building. That's not what we should be doing. We should be saying, look, you've got a parking problem. Let's figure out how we can solve that to keep you here and keep these businesses going. So that might be something that we want to talk about as soon as next month. We can revisit some of that language that we talked about. It's very timely as we've been talking about the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan. How can we, what can the city do to encourage the redevelopment of those Southfield Road parcels? And certainly addressing the parking issue is one of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because I think the screen walls are really important, but it's also important not to just install screen walls for the sake of installing screen walls. If there's a plan to potentially use some of that, some of the parcel differently in the future, right? Then you're just building a wall that you need to tear down, and it doesn't really.
I agree, and it kind of locks that property off from the from the owners, and doesn't, in that case, doesn't benefit them, but maybe creates a little level of additional challenge in their maintenance of those facilities. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic there.
Absolutely, I agree. It's a worthwhile thing to talk about next month's meeting.
Okay.
Susie, real quick question for you. What's the latest on the gas station?
You know, I emailed him last week and said, like, it was the shortest email ever. Like, what's the story? I've got nothing. So I'm going to step up my harassment efforts, because it's not harassment, Scott, not harassment. My official inquiries, No, I don't know. I have not, I was feeling pretty good that he was just very slowly going through whatever review process he needed to at the state, but I'm not seeing, you know, now that restrictions have been lifted, he can do construction. I'm not seeing any activity over there either. So I will request more information on a more regular basis during the week. How's
Hey,
that?
related to that,
Much
Susie,
better.
have you talked to Alex Green recently? He owns the parcel or the property just to the south of
No.
where the gas station is. You might want to check in with him. When we were first considering the site plans for the gas station, he came to planning commission meetings and expressed his opinion about having a business like that in that area. He came to us and expressed some concerns, so it might be worthwhile just to touch base with him.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit early to talk about it, but I just, if we've certainly seen some projects move slowly in the community, and if something like this, if it were to come to a, let's say come to a halt and it's in mid-progress or in a state where the site has been disrupted or, not in the condition that we would want it to be for a longer term situation, do we have any means of enforcing a certain level of cleanup or improving the appearance of the lot beyond maybe a transitional state?
Well, I'm sure Jim Wright would be happy to get all over this. I know he's not pleased with the condition of the property either. So, I mean, first of all, I mean, I think they would have, they'd be, they'd have to go back before either the planning commission or maybe back through the building review portion. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say planning commission, since it's starting to get to be a while. Like, I think their last permit was pulled in November.
Don't they have like 2 years from approval?
Oh, they have
18
6 months or less.
Yeah, it's a year and a half from when they start
Yeah.
construction. They have to
Mhm.
start construction within a year of approval, and
Mhm.
then they can apply for an extension. They come before planning commission, then planning commission makes a recommendation to city council. Ultimately, city council decides whether or not they get the extension of the site plan approval.
So I guess I guess the one lead in I come from that site to the apartments on 11 Mile east of
Yeah.
Southfield, and phase 3, I believe it is, that was supposed to continue.
As it turns out, excellent lead in. They have, so those first 2 units are now available. I just got an email from her last Saturday. So those properties are being rented out, or those units, I should say. They're starting to show those, so that's good. They have a temporary certificate of occupancy which expires at the end of the month, and that is for them to complete their wall between zoning districts, between us and Southfield. Ironically enough, since we were already talking about that, they actually are ready to pull. Well, they're ready to pull their permits to begin buildings 3 and 4. I need to do a little research, since she also asked a question about unit 5, and whether or not it needs to come back before you, even though none of the plans have changed. So I haven't had a chance to look at the timeline. So I can't answer that exactly.
I'm pretty sure they're well beyond.
Are they? Okay.
Oh yeah,
They
max it out, and then I think we gave them a 12-month extension. And that was probably 3 years ago. So.
Oh yeah, so they gotta come back before you guys for sure. Okay. So I'll let her know that this week. And I anticipate you'll see them sometime in the in the fall sometime.
Pushing for another renewal, or is it a re-review at this point because of already having one extension, or is
The
there
ordinance, I think we've discussed this before. The ordinance there's no provision for a second extension. So I think they would have to apply. And I can't remember. You remember, Jill, if we decided they could do it administratively, or because I know we had this conversation. I don't remember the outcome. I'll have to look back and see. But
it could already be
Yeah.
3 years ago?
Yes, but we also talked about the level of progress that they were making and the amount of construction completed. I think that had something to do with it, but we can look that up and get back with you next month.
Okay. But we don't have other things happening, those projects that were supposed to go and are still going or ongoing or still waiting to start. Just good to have an update on those situations. So
Well, speaking of updates, what's the latest with Panera?
No update just yet.
Nothing.
And I did, just because I know the next question is going to be what's going on with Happy's and when
That
are
was
they
it.
going to start. I don't have the answer to that, so I've written that down. I should have asked Rob today when I saw him, so sorry about that. Last time I had talked to them, I think it was beginning of July-ish. I believe they were going out for bids. I think that's what they were waiting on, so I'll follow up with him. But he was pretty excited about like making things happen. So I'm more excited than I've seen him in a while. So I'll take that as a positive sign.
Did they say anything about the bank or the former bank?
No.
No.
Okie dokie.
how about any updates on the property with Happy's Pizza?
That's the one that
Oh,
that he's waiting for bids on.
okay. Sorry, I had a momentary internet glitch here, and everything froze, and so I missed part of that.
Sorry.
we got right down to the adjournment motion.
Where'd everyone go? Jason took over. I wouldn't blame him. So we were like legal update, planning update, staff update? No.
So as far as legal update, I can't remember if we talked about this last planning commission meeting or not, but it is in Jill's planning update newsletter. There was a recent Supreme Court decision that came down that allows for communities to regulate under the Medical Marijuana Act patient caregiver facilities. So that's something that I anticipate this body will be given direction from City Council probably in the near future to begin looking into possible regulations for caregiver facilities under the Medical Marijuana Act. So.
Okay.
That's true.
As far as the planning update, we included our newsletter there, page 82 of your packet. It's quite an extensive packet, but we're there at the end. Part 1 of 2 on the response and adaptation strategies.
And this is Cheryl for the administration update. I wanted to let the Planning Commission know that, well, one, you can drive in Zoom. I don't recommend it. And the governor has allowed for electronic meetings to happen during the course of the emergency status. So right now it looks as though this will be extended for the month of August, we're anticipating. So assuming you don't prefer to meet in person, the option to have your planning commission meeting in August remotely would be an option for you.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl, for that update.
I did have a question for Jill about the newsletter. So a big part of the newsletter talks about the dining platforms and parklets.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is a question for Jill and Susie. Is have any, not that they would, but I'm just curious if any businesses or restaurants in our city have approached the city about opening up a dining parklet to extend their outdoor dining seating.
No, not really. Jagged Fork had asked about like what can be done, and so they have a really tight site. So I actually ended up reaching out to the road commission to find out what the road commission would have to say about any of our businesses really that wanted to social distance and use the right of way. The road commission was shockingly okay with it, and they said they would just need some sort of approval from the city, but no one has come asking for any sort of consideration for that. But I love the idea of parklets. I was harassing Jill about it all last year at the Main Street Planning Conference. I was like, look at this. So yeah.
Parklets are adorable.
They are adorable.
They are. They're a great way of reclaiming space for people.
Yep. Unfortunately, the city already struggling with parking issues.
Mm-hmm.
Taking away
Right.
parking spaces for parklets
And-
becomes challenging.
Right. And really the ideal place for them, even though you want people to be visible and you'd like them to be out on Southfield Road, really behind the buildings is where they would be the most desirable, I think. Just in terms of the noise and the dirt that you get from Southfield Road is probably nicer on the backside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we'd all agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they were circling back to Lathrup Townhomes. They were given a 1-year extension on March 20th, 2017.
Oh.
A little past that.
A little past that.
Past
Yeah.
But was that for phase 2 and getting their building permits, and they did that, and
That was, we
That for all
approved it
of
as
it?
a multi-phase approval
Yeah.
initially. So that encompassed all, I think at the time there were 3 phases initially. So
Yeah, I think we were surprised that it seemed ambitious compared to how quickly or how slowly things had
Mhm.
moved at that point, that they were actually planning to get, I think the last buildings constructed within the same year, and that obviously hasn't happened. So.
All
Great.
right. Well, then I will let them know. Thanks, Scott. The only thing I have to add for the administrative staff update is that that crowdfunding campaign, that patronicity campaign, that we got our $10,000 raised for, that the Loving Lathrup Village Business Relief Mini Grant. Total mouthful. Sorry, I should have shortened that up. Should have used an acronym. Anyway, so that is live. It's available for all the businesses that are in the downtown district that have been open for a minimum of 10 years, have less than 10 employees, and oh my gosh, I just totally blanked. Oh, small mom and pop. So that is live and available to those businesses. It's been put out. They all should have received an email at this point, but it's also posted on the city's website and under our COVID-19 resources page, as well as under the development grant resource page. The application period's open until the end of this month, and we're hoping to award businesses between $500 and $1,500 as quickly as possible. So there's that, and then take a quick drive around City Hall. We've got some flowers. The planters are out front, and we managed to hang about 6 baskets around the parking lot. A little late in the game, so I don't think I'm going to get the rest of them out on Southfield Road, but that'll be phase 2 for spring. So go check them out. Looks pretty.
They look great.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
It was
Susie.
fun to plant them.
So.
And that's it. That's all I got.
Okay, if there are no other updates, I'll move on to 10. Motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yep, that's adjourn.
Yep, bye.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Yep,
Thanks,
see you,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Night.
See you guys.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.